stand for you. Hey. Got a super bad bitch, feel like Jonah Hill. Look at how she walk, and you know it's real. No question, if she like attention, I gotta give it to her, yeah, you know the deal. I'm a boss, I swipe that for you. Girl, you look good, you top 10, amazing. Spark a new flame, I like that for you. Yeah. Tell me what you want, I like that too, baby.
Treat my hoes like the plugins on this damn song. I cracked them all. You know I love it when you got that ass bouncing on me like a basketball. Baby, you could have it all. Only title that I gave you is this wave that I'm on, yeah. Saying that she love me, so I'm playing along. Look in her direction, now she taking it off. And I can't stop thinking about your curves. Teach you about the bees and the birds. Then I eat the cake like dessert. She gon' bust it open real quick for real. I'ma drop it in like Vert.
Got a super bad bitch, feel like Jonah Hill. Look at how she walk, and you know it's real. No question, if she like attention, I gotta give it to her, yeah, you know the deal. I'm a boss, I swipe that for you. Girl, you look good, you top 10, amazing. Spark a new flame, I like that for you. Tell me what you want, I like that too, baby. Yeah, I like that, I do. Grabbing on your left cheek with my right hand, tight pants, got me feeling the type of way. If you want it, I could give it to you all day.
Name a time and a place, but I pull up, yeah. Dinner for the day, we could cook up, yeah. Take you down in the kitchen right after you hit the road. I swear I'm still thinking about your curves. Teach you about the bees and the birds. Then I eat the cake like dessert. She gon' bust it open real quick for real. I'ma drop it in like Vert.
Got a super bad bitch, feel like Jonah Hill. Look at how she walk, and you know it's real. No question, if she like attention, no question, I gotta give it to her, yeah, you know the deal. I'm a boss, I swipe that for you. Girl, you look good, you top 10, amazing. Spark a new flame, I like that for you. Ay, tell me what you want, I like that too, babe. Ay, yeah, I like that. Got a super bad bitch, feel like Tony Hawk.
For a real one.
I'ma drop it in like Bird.
Blood on my fingertips and words on my tongue. So many verses I wish I would've sung. But what if my secrets ruined today? I pour another glass up to keep them at bay. Think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. I found light in the darkness and learned to lead the way. Your flashlight is fading and I'm going my own way. The sharp words of anger should cut me like the knife. You stabbed in my back, but you forgot that I can fight. Think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You love to claim me. You say you make me, then make me again. You love to claim me. You say you make me, then make me again. You love to claim me like I'm some trophy you hold in your hands. Don't make me again. Don't make me again. Think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another, go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others, not like the others. The one inside me, baby, is mine to discover, mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another, go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others, not like the others. The one inside me, baby, is mine to discover, mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe.
Guess that's what I get for leaning into the best friend. Now I've got one more accent, two less hands here for holding. Ignored all of my reasons for running far from my feelings. Now I'm down on my knees and watching you as you're leaving. I hear you say goodbye, and I say I'm fine. But really if I'm honest with myself, I'm a mess. Total fake, thinking I might need some help. 'Cause I never change, always getting in my own way. Oh, look at this mess I've made, look at this mess I've made. Oh, I'll take the blame for making you hate my name. Oh, look at this mess I've made, look at this mess I've made. Oh, oh, look at this mess I've made, look at this mess I've made. Oh, thought I learned my lesson that love does not equal tension. Turns out I'm still the same kid, falling hard for affection. And it hurts so bad when it's over, when we both wake up and we're sober. But got that first little moment, feeling you leaning closer. Hear you say goodbye, and I say I'm fine. But really if I'm honest with myself, I'm a mess. Total fake, thinking I might need some help. 'Cause I never change, always getting in my own way. Oh, look at this mess I've made, look at this mess I've made. Oh, I'll take the blame for making you hate my name. Oh, look at this mess I've made, look at this mess I've made. Oh, oh, look at this mess I've made, look at this mess I've made. Oh, for so long I was frozen. My hands were tied, my legs were broken.
It is very nice to see that we now have a totally full room for the Summer Summit 2024. Thank you to all the members that stayed after the General Assembly. Thank you to all the new arrivals. And thank you not least to all the participants online that are listening in today. So this is a kind of a special year, right? So it's election time, a lot of things going on in Europe and beyond. A lot of uncertainty, I would say. France, not to mention one of the uncertainties, US, new commission, new parliament. But, you know, there is nothing like a good change to also see opportunities. And there has been a lot of good things done also in the past that we want to build on top of. As you see here, we have a full agenda with some excellent speakers coming up. And just to start with, as I said, a lot of good speakers for the first one, Margrethe, that I will introduce in a second, but we also have, of course, going with the ladies first, Catherine from Bosch, one of our digital champions in Europe, also dealing with both manufacturing, green technologies. We have Anne Medler, again, breakthrough energy, an excellent speaker and thought leader here in the EU and beyond, I would say. We have Luc van Middelaar, the founder of the Brussels Institute of Geopolitics. We have Dennis Redonnet, the Deputy Director General of DG Trade. And not least, we have the State Secretary for Economy of Portugal, João Rui Ferreira. So with that, I mean, if you ask anybody in town, who is the lady of digital? I think that everybody would say it is Margrethe Vestager. She has been the champion now for many, many years. The AI Act came during her leadership, and we might not agree on everything, but I have the deepest respect to today welcome Margrethe on stage to discuss the digital critical technologies.
Hello.
So, a lot of years in Brussels and a lot of fantastic things done. Now, looking at the critical technologies, and you saw that we have a study coming out today, it shows that we are ahead on one technology, which is connectivity, but quite far behind on the rest of the technologies. But of course, it's never time to give up. It's always time to get back on track again. We see that on technologies like AI and semiconductors. It's been really difficult, and it's been a wake-up call, I think, right? We all were in this happy global world of we can get everything from everywhere, and now things are changing. So one of the big findings that we had is that we lack consolidation, meaning that we have a lot of small companies, but typically they are consolidated or leave Europe before they grow big. So we do innovations, but we don't really do consolidations, and we don't scale across Europe. So if you look at the findings of the study, do you find them shocking, or I mean, do we need to lead on everything, or what would be like a path for Europe on this?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me. And this is really not to provoke, but I think your findings are quite plain vanilla. This has been, the path for quite some time. To say that we need change, that change has begun. Mm-hmm. And it's not all about economic security, because economic security concerns certain technologies, but there is plenty of what is just normal market-based global endeavors. And two things in particular, in order to be more successful. The first thing, obviously, is a single market that works in full. That we have, the 24/7 round-the-clock enforcements. First, of course, of what we have, because only when you enforce what you have can you sort of legitimately ask for more, and we need more. And second, and I think that should be a top priority, is to make that capital market work. Mm-hmm. I've been part of capital market discussions for 10 years. We have the legislation. We've had 2 consecutive action plans that are done and dealt with. But we have member state resistance because we sub-optimize in Europe. And we will not have funding for scale if we do not have one capital market. And I think it's really important to focus. So basically, one should not be allowed to say competitiveness before we had fixed that capital market. Because it is the core, that and a single market that works. And then, of course, last but not least, that in Europe we need to have many more skilled people. We have sort of the first preview of the state of the digital decade. A lot of things are working, but one of the things where we hardly moving is on basic skills and top specialists, especially when it comes to have a female take up. So we have set things rolling, but we still need also to scale our actions, actually to make it work. Because we are less than half both in equity, bonds and venture capital in Europe. So no surprise that businesses cannot scale. Because you cannot scale without the capital that comes on board. You cannot scale without the competence for scaling. So I think there is a number of things to do, but it's just to get the job done.
So I think that was a very strong message. We have all the countries here. You have France, you have nearly all the member states present. So a good message to take home. We need enforcement of the capital market, and this is, of course, also one of the things that we are definitely supporting. So you mentioned a few things that are enforcement of the capital market and then the skills. Right now, looking at the strategy that came out on economic security from the Commission, it was very focused like a trade restrictions measures, export controls, investment screenings. But when you mention skills, for example, this is a member state's competence. Is there a way that we can address this in a different way to become more competitive, do more single market, do more skills? Is it also the Commission that can kind of facilitate that, or what are the tools that we can also use?
Well, I think for skills, if you look at the recovery and resilience plans in themselves, so give or take 30% is everything digital, 18 billion euros are focusing on basic skills. So the funding is there, the need is there. What we're faced with is a lack of action. For people to have access to learn more, I do hope that the emergence and the acceleration of AI is a call to action, because the risk is not that AI will take your job. The risk is that the next person educated in dealing with AI will take your job. And I think that maybe is a machine that can make people say, okay, maybe I should do something else. Because it's relevant throughout your life. And now when funding is available, it ought to be really a no-brainer if we are serious about wanting to do more. Because it is one of the prime barriers for businesses to scale, that they cannot get the people that they want. And I think that is an important part of it. The second part is that economic security is our strategy built on member state competences, because there's one thing that you can get in Brussels like this, and that's a turf war. So we have resisted that temptation, and instead saying, listen, what we want to provide with our economic security strategy is kind of a European prism. So when member states use their competences for export controls, for instance, that they have a European perspective in doing that. Because then we can remain as open as possible, only as closed as absolutely necessary. So that we can trust the technology that is here, and that Europe can have a heavier footprint in some of these crucial supply chains. Take semiconductors, for instance, where really important projects are being launched right now. I was just in Catania in Sicily for the STM project, because they have a full campus, vertically integrated from the granulate that makes the wafers to the packaged and tested semiconductors. So, things are happening on ground when people take action.
So let me dive into two things: the skills, and then a little bit the international afterwards. So okay, we all know, skills. The Commission has done a lot with the funding available, etc. But do you also see, like, now legislation is like there is nothing on the table anymore, and no new things at least? Is there a time now, at the end of this Commission also to, discuss and like plant seeds with the Council on maybe taking common action, like legal action, for example, having a law or changing the law so there needs to be, or the curricula that there needs to be computational thinking or digital skills in secondary schools all over Europe, for example. Do you see that for the Commission that there's a chance also to, be more a facilitator of Council decisions?
We have just done that, not in that area, but when we have no competence, what we do is that we ask the Council to give themselves advice. Council, what should I do, Council? Well, then the Commission very generously comes with input. And here it was for sort of economic security consideration in research. Because we finance a lot of research, and we don't want that knowledge that is being created, cutting-edge innovation, to leak out of Europe. You need to have better due diligence in the research sector. For businesses, of course, it's a very specific situation because you invest in research and innovation in continuation of your business model. For publicly funded research, I think absolutely necessary to know who you're dealing with in order to maintain the openness, which I think is absolutely core of research DNA. So I think more can be done, but what was done with the digital rights and principles was indeed also that you have a right to be educated. And as said, it is, I think, in every recovery and resilience plan that you need to do something about this. So it's not lack of encouragement, it's not lack of putting it on the top of the agenda. And I'm really surprised to see that not many more member states, they simply run with it. Because we have a very intense discussion about competitiveness. It's everywhere. But looking at the economic model of Europe, core of competitiveness is that people can use their talent in full.
Yeah. No, I mean, businesses only agree there. I think for the last 25 years, I've been a part of that discussion, and it apparently is so difficult. I always say we can fly to the moon, but we cannot solve this problem. I can't believe it. But it's thank you for encouraging that, and we see the difference. Like Spain has run ahead; they have jumped from the 17th place to the 6th place in the DESI index, whereas others have just spent it in normal projects and haven't really moved. So, a big thank you for facilitating that, and we are definitely going to push that agenda much harder also in the future. So on the international part, you said we need to maintain the openness. It's no secret that, you've been a digital champion, but you have also been, a stakeholder that has brought EU and US much closer together with the TTC. A relationship that is, invaluable. And we cannot say how valuable it is for businesses today, especially with further geopolitical tensions. So, how do you see we can continue that? How do you see, the whole digital agenda? Do you? I know that it's projections, but how can we make sure that in critical technologies that we have like really close partnerships with our like-minded stakeholders?
Well, I think the first thing is to continue to pass the message, this is useful, from the business side of the equation. Because it's much more difficult to close down something that some of your key sponsors find to be useful. I think that is one of the things that can give the Trade and Technology Council longevity. And I think it's really important. What we have achieved, for instance, in digital, is that we have the same approach when it comes to AI. So focus on the use cases rather than on the technology itself. Having the early warning system of when it comes to the risk of shortages in semiconductors. Working with the Americans to prevent a subsidy race so that taxpayers get as much value for money as possible. But also within the G7 to use that close relationship to move the G7. One of the things, the code of conduct for AI, because of course we need to bridge the situation that we have now with the AI Act coming into force. And also, of course, for jurisdictions who are not able to legislate, that they have something that creates sort of a similar set of de facto rules as to how to fare. And last but not least, latest when we talk about economic security, that in the G7 conclusions, they ask us to do sort of qualitative criteria for trustworthiness. Because the problem, if you want to be able to trust technology, but you're confined to the single market, is that the price tag may be tad challenging. But if you can make, the entire G7 a premium market for technology that lives up to essential criteria of trustworthiness, cybersecurity, no data leakage, we will develop these criteria in the coming months, then you have a premium market with scale. And then, of course, the price tag becomes much smaller. And I think that those are the benefits of really active international efforts.
Yeah. So I notice also you've been very active on the G7 Plus, I would say the Hiroshima process. And AI and now even cyber has been a part of that agenda. You'll find many people here who has been active on exactly that agenda, and we have founded the Tech 7 to support it. Do you see that there will be kind of a common label or something developed that will be like an international trademark, that where we have the common grounds that businesses can use in the future?
I think that should be the ambition.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important not to let perfect be the enemy of speed, because that is very often what happens. So get it started. Say, okay, this is the starting point. Let's try out with these criteria. Use them for subsidies. Use them for the non-price points in public tenders. Learn from it. When we have the first experience, evaluate, see other things that we want to correct. And then, of course, learn from one another, because we have different systems, so we'll also use criteria in a different way. And I think with some iterations, eventually we could get to such a label to say, well, these are the criteria. If you live up to that, you're good to go. This is the market where people trust what you deliver.
Yeah. So you spoke about a bit about skills and the ability to scale. In the report, you will see that one of the biggest problems identified from companies is the scale. Any kind of them, the companies that we have are typically small fish, and small fish tends to be either eaten by bigger fish or grow bigger somewhere else. So how can we address this problem of consolidation and scale? Looking at competition law, which you, of course, are a specialist in, do we now, if you ask digital businesses, they say, but I'm global, I'm born global. Digital wins with scale, I need to scale, so I'm born global. So do you think that in Europe we need to start adjusting our definition of what is a scalable company, and can we consolidate more within the technology sectors?
Well, I think that very much depends on what you mean by technology sectors and what market they're in. Because you may have a global mentality, but you may not be in the global market. These are two very different things. Because our test, when we look at a merger, is there somewhere else your customer can turn to if you limit choice, you don't want to innovate anymore, and you have higher prices? Can they turn to someone else? As long as they can turn to someone else, the market is expanding. But if you can capture them so that they will have to eat it when you stop investing in innovation, if you have higher prices, if you limit the choice, then of course you have a problem. Because the problem is not competition law. The problem is if you don't want to be challenged. If your wishful thinking is that, oh my God, if I could only have my own monopoly, then I think life will be hard for you. Because the thing that we are testing is basically, are you still challenged? And soon we have the Euro tournament right now. We'll soon have the Olympics. No athlete will succeed if they have been cushioned at home. You know, if you want to run a marathon, you need to be able to run a marathon. It cannot be that I have carried you all the way. Then you will not be able to run a marathon. And I think that is the fundamental here, that you need to say, okay, yes, I can scale, but I will still be challenged in the market that I'm in. And of course, my wish is that that market would at least be the single market. And this is why enforcement of the single market and developing new single markets ought to be top priority for the next Commission. In assets, capital, the most obvious one. But second, also in telco, we have 27 telco markets, which is unsustainable if one wants to scale. So there are a number of things that could be done.
Thank you so much. Now, turning a little bit to your amazing career, going back on memory lane. What are the things, when you look back, what are the things that you're most proud about? And yeah, let's start with that one. What's the thing you think, like, I really made it, I'm really proud of this?
But usually I don't know yet because the courts are not done.
Yeah.
And I have won cases and I have lost cases we have won cases, I have lost cases. That's usually how that works. But I think one of the things I'm proud of is that we have changed our approach. When I came in and picked up what became the first Google case with a substantial fine, people were like, but these are impressive companies. They can do nothing wrong. What are you thinking? To where we are today, enforcing the Digital Markets Act, where we have put a label on those who need to restrain their market power in order for the market still to stay open. I think that is not only sort of a travel from case to Digital Markets Act. It's also a development in how we view technology. And that just because that you're excellent and you have grown is not a free path to do whatever you want, because then innovation tends to stop. And digitization is not over. Not at all.
Okay, cool. Second question on regulation. So I think the businesses they're a little bit full, right? They're like, if we look at our members, they say, I mean, there is nothing left to regulate. I mean, we're done. And we see that which is the worrying trend. We see de-investment in Europe at the moment. So more and more of the European companies are divesting in R&D and marketing of their products outside Europe. So do you think how can we solve that? We have a huge burden, and for companies having to report or comply, no matter whether it's right or wrong, no matter whether we are doing right or wrong, it is money. Yeah? So if you need to spend money on that, there is something else you don't spend money on. So how can we make this regulatory, sorry for my expression, hell, of all the reporting and implementations on top of each other? How can we make it much more efficient?
Well, it's the Digital Summer Summit. The first port to call is, of course, how to digitalize it. How to use blockchain, how to use reporting tools that have one data pool that other reports can draw from. And the second thing is to be specific. So what exactly is it? The Commission has already tabled 41 proposals to make the administrative burden more easy to bear. So I think being specific is also really, really important, because otherwise it's just complaining. And it's really difficult to say from the side of the Commission, we'll now table a proposal that will enable businesses not to complain anymore. Also, this is Europe, so how would you do that? So I think it's really important to be specific, and then to work with regulators to say, this is how to digitalize it. And then have a price for the prime enforcer. Because the problem is that very often we are politically praised, we get the attention by announcing new stuff. Preferably with another 500 million that has been, scooped up wherever. And then we pass the legislation, and then we're distracted by the new shiny thing. So to, make it part of the culture, part of the appreciation, part of what you see, part of what you prioritize, that legislation is implemented and enforced. Because otherwise, the political logic would still be that we need something new. I think in another area, for instance, I've been working on biotech, and one of the things that I find important is that we're competitive when it comes to the approval procedures in order to get new biotech innovations to markets, because approval times is also something that can be a competitive advantage. That will take another legislative proposal. I think most people would think this is a good idea. So don't let it be a war against legislative proposals, because some of them may be very needed. But make it a priority also for you as an association, for all those who are represented here, to see and appreciate when things are implemented and enforced in the proper way. And of course, in every member state, warn that when a directive is implemented, that we do not get 27 variations of the same rule. Because that happens very often. Then something, but it would suit me very well if you just tweak that a bit. And what needs to resist that temptation?
Yeah. So we totally agree with you. I can tell you that next week, the whole staff is going on a 2-day staff away, and we're going to go through all the legislative proposals to see how can we make it smarter, what do we need to change, is there something that we need to add to basically change this, and also looking at the reporting burden to be very concrete and able to propose something to the Commission. So I'm going to ask you one last question. If there is anything you should have done differently, what would that be?
I should have been bolder. Because, and it's that, with an afterthought, because you can only change things when the zeitgeist is also changing. Good legislation is sort of 80% known stuff and 20% to give a direction. Because then it's also easier to implement, because you work with the changes that are coming already, but you give a direction by shaping what is the direction of travel, so the remaining 20%. So maybe it wouldn't have been possible to be faster, but I think one of the main challenges in Europe is a combination of, are we working together? We've shown the last 5 years what amazing things we can do when we work together. Think of the vaccine strategy, the energy crisis, helping out in Ukraine. Second thing is self-esteem. Europe very often say, no, probably not, we're not that good. No, let's analyze. Let's have a cozy moment where we celebrate how bad things can be. We need to be a bit more assertive, a bit more out there. We have so many things to be proud of. And last but not least, if we complete the willingness to work together, some more self-confidence with speed, then a lot of the things that we are concerned about, we can change.
Great. Be bolder. So listen, you may or may not be there in February for the Masters of Digital. Who knows? But I just want to say, sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. That's totally okay. That's democracy. But
I would worry a lot if we always agreed.
Yeah, me too. But that's just how it is, right?
Yes.
And but one thing we do agree on is that you have been a fantastic leader. You are a fantastic leader. You have been a queen of digital policies and of the transatlantic relations that are extremely important for our businesses and for our security and our future. And you managed to break down that barrier between but we have troubles in steel and Boeing and whatever it was, and you managed to break down that and really get technology as the the things that gathered us instead. And therefore, because we don't know if you're there in February, because this is normally where we hand out our award for digital masters, the Masters of Digital, I would like to announce that you are hereby joining the long row of award winners. So the Ukrainian digital minister, Ursula von der Leyen, Roberto Viola, and Nadia Calvino. And with that, I would like to
thank
give you the
you.
prize of being a master of
very
digital.
nice. Thank you. That is very nice. Thank you very much.
Tillykke.
Tusind tak. Tusind tak.
And with that, a big thank you to you for the leadership that you have and will provide, I'm sure, and for attending our summer summit, and for taking Europe's, being bold and take us into the digital era
It
of
was
Europe.
my pleasure. Thank you
Thank you
very,
so
very much.
Thank you. I have to stay. You stay. Okay, the clicker is there, Cecilia. Thank you. How could I live without these guys? I would get lost, So it's no secret that we have a study coming out today, and you might or might not have read it, but now I'm going to try to take you through some of the conclusions of the study. First of all, in the MOD, we announced that we had somebody internally who really carried the love story of the single market. The last study we did, the single market study, which was Vincenzo. It was known by people went there to get it signed by Vincenzo. So we're still, laughing a bit about that. But I also have some excellent people who has made a huge difference on this one, which is Marta and Jan, who has basically carried this through, of course, with our members. I don't know if you are here. Where are you? They're in the back. Can we just give Jan and Marta a big hand before we start? It is actually quite excellent. The methodology is good. It has concrete findings and concrete recommendation based on facts. There is a lot of discussions around it we can have, and we'll have that later in the panel. But let me take you through a few of the conclusions. So here we have the 8 of the 10 critical technologies that was mentioned in the Commission's European economic security strategy. We chose the 8 of them because that's what we could cover with our membership. And we looked into what is the European position. I mean, you should be blind if you don't see that Europe is behind on technologies. Doesn't mean that we don't have good things. It just means that we are behind. That's a fact. So let's start by looking at the overview of this. So we are leading in one technology. Hi, Anne. We are leading in one technology, which is connectivity. Okay, so this is just the overview. I'll tell you what the more detailed findings are in a second. We are leading in one of the 8. Then we are like in game, but I would say not strong on the middle ones. So additive manufacturing, energy tech, biotech, quantum, and space tech. And then, unfortunately, on AI and semiconductors, it looks not that good. Actually, it looks quite bad. And thank you also for your suggestions yesterday on how we should actually address this problem internally in Digital Europe. And I'm sure that my staff will get in touch with to hear more about your ideas. So let's take a few examples. I can't go through all the technologies, but you'll find the findings in the report. So this is not only on connectivity, is not only a jolly story, right? I mean, the truth is we have the world's best technology, period. Toot, right? So that's the celebration. Now, if we look at the markets and the profits, they are shifting to being outside and have for a while been outside Europe because there is a lack of adoption here. A lack of investment and a lack of adoption. And if I'm not wrong, I did hear something about mergers being allowed for the telecom operators, but if we look at the market, we lowered the prices for consumers, and we said, you guys, 110 telecom operators in Europe, you cannot merge. I mean, page 1, right? It's like low prices, no mergers, no scale of productions, blah, right? So we do have like a gap there to catch up with. Then you have lack of consolidation and investment, and what we call the infrastructure accelerator effect, right? You make a bridge, all of a sudden people can trade it because you have that with infrastructure also. As you don't have investment, you don't also have the uptake of, for example, businesses of 5G or 6G. So that is definitely, it's a good story, but it's not a lasting story if it continues like this. So huge investments and bold moves on infrastructure and on digital connectivity needs to be done to keep this leadership position. Then if we look on AI, we have, that's the other side. So we go from this end to this one, right? So here we have a lot of small companies, but we all know digital needs scale. If you don't scale and you don't scale fast, you won't be there for long. And we have a lot of small companies, very few big ones, and the EU companies are typically, but they are. The good story is that they are actually creating quite a lot of value, companies on top of existing companies' AI models. And but we do have an extremely weak position in the early parts of the supply chain, but we are still present in the B2B. But AI is not a good story. It's I think we have around 6% of the venture capital that goes to startups and scale-ups, 6% of the world's venture capital, and we have 1/6. So just the numbers are the same, but it's not the same number. We have 1/6 of the investment in AI that US has. So quite a big investment gap. Then let's look at quantum. Well, in quantum, we're really strong in R&D. But to my knowledge, it's typically in R&D that are not company-based, but university research institutes. But that's, as I always say, that's a good thing, but it's the spending. So normally what we should do is like, we spend money to earn money. Right now we spend money, period, right? Which normally is a very bad idea if you want to get rich sometime on this, right? Meaning that we are also not creating private sector jobs. We had the winner of the Unicorn Award this year, yes, in February, was Multiverse from Spain. It's one of the few quantum companies, very late supply chain, so late in the supply chain, not early in the supply chain. So how do we get more of that and how do we get the scale? There are some interesting things going on. Novo Nordisk just put loads of money in working with the Niels Bohr Institute. Super interesting, collaborations between private, and not public sector and private, but private sector with the public. And I think we need much more of that. And when we look at quantum, number of publications, here you see China is running ahead. EU is, just there with the US. But you can look at the fish. What happens to small fish? Yeah, small fish get eaten by bigger fish, right? That's how it is. So we cannot only have small fish, we need to have big fish, fishes. Yeah, if we want to survive. Anyway, going to energy tech. Oh, yeah, the headline is fantastic, right? It's complicated. And I'm sure that Anne can tell us much more about that in a second. So what we hear is we used to lead. We used to be the masters of green technologies and wind and solar, etc. We are quite strong still on digital and wind, although that components in these industries are increasingly coming from elsewhere outside Europe, which is exactly what happened to solar, and all of a sudden, solar was gone. Solar is history. I'm being a bit like bold here, okay? But it's not solar is not in a good position. And we have a huge investment shift even by European companies to invest in R&D and in marketing of products to either China or the US. Now we have to see if we have export controls, etc. But let's hope that we have more investment and more innovation first. How to fix it? Two of the big things that are drawing us back is the permit structure. It can take like 8-10 years to build a windmill. You want to build a factory. It takes you like 8 years to. What happened in Germany? Was it something like removing black ground, and would take like another 15 years before we can dig a hole in the ground. So and then of course procurement criterias, typically in Europe, price. If you only go by price in the end, I mean, there are other places where you can find funding much easier than in Europe, and then you can afford to buy your way in with lower prices, and voila, what do you get? You get what you asked for. So I would say in the digital, I mean, some of our members are champions still in green technologies. We still have a lot of good R&D, but the story is not going to last if we continue in the direction that we have just seen here. Then additive manufacturing. Just to say, this is not like advanced manufacturing, and one of the things I think we should challenge is that when they look at critical technologies, depending on what they are planning to do, right? So when we look at manufacturing, we cannot only look at 3D printing. We also need to look at other technologies like digital twins, artificial intelligence for optimization of X, Y, Z. So there are many other products where we might be leading. But here it is. That's the scope of the commission. It's the 3D printing. And we used to be a world leader there. There's a huge consolidation. Like in all tech companies, huge consolidation phases are taking place as we speak. More investment and innovation in US and China. You see them here. And we believe that the focus should be wider if we're talking investment, not restrictions. Okay, anyway, so just some of them. You will find also the rest of the 8 technologies in the study. As you see here, you have space technologies, quite high, but again, it's a little bit like quantum. A lot of public sector funding, good research and development, very little return on investment, very little private sector and scalable companies. On biotech, it's a bit the same. We used to be really world leading, but what happened like 10, 15 years ago is that we started restricting things on data. We started not collaborating amongst companies on, for example, creating data spaces. So we lack that, collaboration in private sector, and public sector started to restrict, any kind of use of data, and therefore we saw a big shift of biotech companies moving to the US, both for being the research and development and having access to innovate, but also basically for marketing of their products because they could go faster to market. So the conclusion are we spent our money not necessarily in the wrong way, but we forget about why we spent the money. We spent public money to get money back, right? And somehow that doesn't materialize into companies, and we have discussed why. So, instead of being like all depressed and saying we cannot do anything about it, this is the how. If you look at the economic security strategy, this is all about export controls, investment screening, trade, what we call trade restrictive measures. They might be needed, but they're definitely not going to boost investment, right? It's not what will happen because we are in global supply chains is disruptions. So what we say is like here, why don't we shift it? For once, why are we not bold? Why don't we believe that we have a private sector that can actually do the job? Remove barriers of internal market, look at partnering, strategic partnerships and competitiveness as the tools for solving the crisis that we are in on critical technologies. So what we did was ask these companies, what works for you? What will make you a success? And here's what came out. They said, of course, restrictive measures, they're not necessarily going to help us. We are in international supply chains. We will be somehow disrupted, paralyzed for periods maybe, no new investments. maybe they are needed to do certain things, but they're not going to help us to earn more money and grow. Second one here, over there, they said, harmonized regulation, education and skills. The one you see coming out as the strongest one is funding and common European tax incentives. Money in pockets to do business, right? And then pan-European procurement, instead of like buying stuff in small pockets of, Denmark and Sweden and Germany, why not make big programs of scale for procurement? And of course, not only with price as a criteria. And then what we call private-public, not public-private, but private-public partnerships, led by private sector, where the private sector has the leadership of, for example, you can have, as I mentioned before, the Novo Nordisk Niels Bohr, where it's a collaboration for really developing, cutting-edge new technologies that is worth something for companies that they can basically base their research and whatever on. So, and will benefit the society as a whole. So that's what we call the high, and then of course large-scale infrastructure investment. That's what we call the high impact. That's what they told us. They said, you want us to succeed? Less of this, more of that. Of course, we know that the Commission works in silos. Now we're going to stir them up in a pot and say, thank you, but when you have a strategy, could you please consider the internal market and competitiveness as one of your great tools to act with? So, just to say, before we go further, we have a lot of great companies. These are some of the companies that contributed to this study. And a big thank you to all of them. We have the ability now to basically poll, our membership and also our NTA's membership to know much more what's going on ground. And that is one of our vision for the next commission, is to provide much more knowledge on what's going on from the business side, to make sure that the next commission is a facilitation, not a regulation commission, but a facilitation commission that can facilitate the success also of businesses in Europe and of people in Europe, and not least of the decisions of the Council of the Member States. So with that, I think that I have kicked off the next fantastic panel that we will have, which is all about how to make our Europe a great digital powerhouse. So with that, I need to do what? The chairs. Okay, we need to do the chairs first. So I will take, if anybody has questions then, why they do the chairs? I'll say why they do the chairs. Does anybody have questions? I can take a few questions from the floor. Chris, come on, ask me a question. No. Anybody has questions? No. You see. No? Question? No. Nobody wants to ask a question. Okay, so I'm so clear. We know exactly where the path we're on, right? Okay, and now we have the chairs. And with that, of course, I would love to welcome our next speakers. The Deputy Director General of GD Trade, Anne Medler, so Dennis Redonnet, Anne Medler, Vice President of Europe Breakthrough Energy, Luc Medela, and Catherine Watson from Bosch. Please, hello and welcome on stage, please. Well, anywhere, yeah. Yes, please. Hey, hi. Good to see you. So, do you think it was that clear? We didn't have any questions. Let's see, because now we have polling and questions, and so you're not asleep yet, right? So you need to grab the pen and be ready to basically ask this fantastic panel a lot of questions. I think we also have you have a scan code, right? So they can send questions on Slido. There you go, the Slido. So if you scan that code, you can also write your questions and we will collect them. and you will also be able to participate in our great poll, where you can decide what is the most efficient tool to address these problems in a second. So, first of all, I mean, we know for a fact, thank you all of you for joining, thank you. We have like the ladies' lounge and the men's lounge. And by coincidence. So we know for a fact that we only have 10%. If we look at top 100, Europe has around 10% of those companies. And you need to go quite far down the line to find the companies. We have a few that are extremely valuable. We've just heard that we're not at the forefront, but of course we're determined not to give up. So the first round, I'm going to do a little bit on the big picture, and then we're going to go a little bit. We're going to do a poll for the policy measures and what you are saying, and then we will address, how can we actually work with this problem. So Dennis, of course, welcome. Thank you so much. You've been deeply involved, of course, in the economic security strategy. Can you tell us a little bit more about, the 3 Ps? It's promote, partner, and protect. And what are you trying to do with this strategy?
Thanks for having me. Look, I think it's good that you start with the 3 Ps because I note what you say out of the study on the need for balance, right? A balance between openness and, where necessary, in pockets, protection, and balance indeed between the promote and the protect arm. And I would argue that the 3rd P, the partner part, is not an afterthought. It's absolutely essential, because at the end of the day, if we're talking about the competitiveness of key sectors which have a European footprint, competitiveness can only be global competitiveness. If not, the internal market is too small in any case to ensure global competitiveness. So the balance between different pillars of that strategy are a well understood need, and I think that it moves forward now at different speeds. There are different work streams. We are in the implementation of the economic security strategy of June 2023, and perhaps that has created some confusion. In January, we have taken forward a package of measures, initiatives, hard law, soft law, but in the protect area. But that doesn't mean that it is taking over or taking precedence from the promote side. I think it's essentially about giving meaning to what does it mean to de-risk the economy where we need to de-risk it, and at the same time continue to maximize the opportunities from openness and integration, global economic integration. That is what underpins, I think, an economic security strategy, to make it super simple. It means that what we're looking to do is ensure up our competitiveness, where necessary, level the playing field as well, which is important. That's why there are trade and investment policy type issues that come into bear, which is my bit of the puzzle. But it certainly doesn't mean that we want to create artificially global economic fragmentation. I think, on the contrary, the real risk, if you move from a pure logic of efficiency in international economic relations to one where you have an element of efficiency and an element of resilience, security, is that you have too much of a pendulum swing, and if you have too much of a pendulum swing, you're going to create unnecessary global economic fragmentation. I think that's the one thing that we want to avoid doing, because that's inconsistent with the European interest. Maybe that's a bit broad, but I'm happy to elaborate, of course, on the tools if you want.
So when you, can I just one follow-up question? When you say promote, so we of course say there is a 4th P that is missing, right? Private sector. So, but if you look at the promote, what would be the most kind of significant things that will be done under promote? How do you see that we can? I'll tell you maybe a bit of. Sanino invited me to speak at the External Action Service Summit with all the ambassadors, and I asked them what kind of companies in technology do you know, and I was there was not so many, right? So how can we? What's the promote bit? How do we do the promote bit?
Well, you're asking sort of the wrong person, because of course, being on the trade and investment side and dealing notably with strategic trade and strategic investment controls,
Yeah.
I happen to be operationally more on the protect side. So I'm a protect kind of guy, but not it's not ideological or emotional.
Yeah.
Just functionally,
Yeah.
I'm on the protect
Yeah.
side. I think there's a suite of microeconomic policies in particular in terms of the calibrating of sectoral industrial policy type measures, innovation-related policies, whether it is fostering of research or research security, the two sides of the same coin. Skills, you mentioned this, which of course are the bedrock of, again, the competitiveness of the key sectors in the green and digital transition. And this is basically what the entirety of the promote universe. The protect side, in relation to this, I think is very targeted, or at least we see it in a very targeted manner. We are looking at the questions are relating to strategic trade controls or strategic investment controls, or certain instruments to level the playing field, with two objectives in mind. One is precisely filling the gaps in the level playing field, because the level playing field is not there for all kinds of reasons that have to do with insufficiency of the global trade rule book, etc. And a very specific issue relating to tech, in my view. This is why we are looking increasingly at things such as investment screening, inter alia, is the necessity to avoid the leakage of critical, in particular digital tech, to destinations of concern, in particular because we observe the spread of civil-military fusion strategies. Now, that's an essential security question, but of course it affects trade and investment, it affects, to some extent, integration. So the protect tools have got to be very targeted, and you need to have, and it's a fundamental principle in economic theory, one objective, one instrument, right? So you want to level the playing field, you have instruments dedicated to that. You want to avoid unwanted technology leakage, you can equip yourself, and we need to do it better at European level, that's the whole question, to those aspects as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Let's turn to Anne. Anne, you definitely know about Promote and opportunities. So you are working every day. I mean, you're first of all digital savvy and know everything about digital policies, but now you're working on energy tech. We used to be like really strong leaders in energy tech. In wind, we are still leading as long as it might last. But we do see that in many areas we're lacking behind the Chinese. Will we still have a strong position in wind or other areas in 10 years? And what are the opportunities that are out there?
It's a good question. It's actually why I went from digital tech to clean tech, because I thought, after 20 years in digital tech, I sort of gave up and thought, let's pivot to something where Europe can really be a leader. That was just 4 years ago. And now, unfortunately, I have to say, while there is a lot of promise, there are also many challenges. So you spoke about wind. Which, of course, for you coming from Denmark, you know a lot about. Wind was, of course, stood up in Europe, was painstakingly built up here with a lot of R&D funding some 4 decades ago, even longer. Last year, I got very engaged in wind, even though I work on emerging clean technologies. Wind is a mature technology, but why did I do that? I wrote an op-ed last August, essentially to ring the alarm bell that this was yet another sort of industrial policy disaster in the making, because even though we said we would double down on on renewables, which of course includes wind, even though in a next generation EU significant funds were earmarked for renewables, our own wind industry was essentially on its knees. We were really at risk last year of losing the wind industry. And that is of course after already having lost the solar industry. And I just couldn't understand why no one was saying anything about this, because that was obviously very troublesome. So we haven't turned it around, but at a minimum, we now have some awareness. Some of you may know that we got the European Wind Power Package underway. Last year, President von der Leyen mentioned wind in her State of the Union. So a lot kicked in. Nonetheless, wind has now, if you look globally, Chinese wind turbine manufacturers have about anywhere between, I would say, 65 to 70% of the global market share. So we are not strongly positioned at the moment. So our own company, Siemens Gamesa, Vestas, Nordex, Enercon, also GE Vernova, even though GE is an American company, we count them as a European company because they have very sizable manufacturing facilities in Europe. They're all under extreme pressure, loss-making. This is for a continent that has said we're doubling this. Renewables is our sort of, backbone of the energy transition. How is that possible? How on earth is that possible, right? And that is the conundrum. Part of that is an unlevel playing field. However, Chinese have not sold yet a lot of wind turbines in Europe. But you mentioned it, a really slow permitting. It takes years from selling a wind turbine to actually being deployed. I mean, there's so many hurdles underway, right? And that's, in the meantime, you have inflation, you have COVID, you have broken down supply chains. So very, very difficult for our manufacturers. No one really paying attention, and this is essentially why I, at the time, rang. Is the audio bad? It's okay.
I think the audio is back. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. So, but, and of course, we also don't have an external industrial policy. So at most, we think about our own market, but the growth markets are outside of Europe, right? I mean, so we don't do that well. I've been advocating for years that we need an external industrial policy because the EU market, while sizable, is peanuts in the scheme of things. So we need to do that better. If I look at what is needed now, I mean, the opportunity is that we keep the industry afloat, even though I will say that most of them have scaled back global ambitions, so they're hoping to keep the European market. Also, the Americans are buying our wind turbines, also for security reasons. Every wind turbine has about 300 sensors. They plug right into the power grid, so there is an element here of also protection of critical infrastructure, very important. What is needed? We need to invest in the electricity grid. I mean, it's crazy to build an offshore wind farm but don't have the grid to bring the power to land. So something so basic, but we are not doing that in many cases. We need massive investments in the power grid. We need to accelerate the permitting for renewables, but also for grids and also for industrial manufacturing facilities. Or the permitting is still too slow. We see improvements, but still, and also not digitalized, by the way. There are studies done on how permitting is done. In many countries, this is a paper-based process that takes years. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, this is really where we should be digging in. I spoke about the level playing field, which is actually quite unlevel, and we need to really focus the innovation, not just on the R&D, which we do well, but on the scaling up and the commercialization. This is where Europe falls short, and it is for me heartbreaking to see, after having experienced this in digital technologies, that I'm witnessing it yet again in clean tech. We need to, this is Europe's weak spot. It's not in the early stages of the innovation cycle, it's in the later stages, scaling up commercialization. If we don't do that better, we'll turn ourselves into really an incubator for the world. It's really bad return on research money if we don't get this straight. And this is not unknown. I've been working for this for well over a decade, and why we cannot get our hands around how to do this better is just beyond me.
Yeah, but I also hear that you say there are opportunities. If we can speed up the permits, maybe we could do like an European permit system that are automized. I don't know. So there are things that we can do that would actually move this forward, right? And I guess this is where we're focusing, right? Yeah?
Digitalization of the public sector as a massive emergency. I mean, really, this needs to happen, not just for permitting, but across the board. Digitalization of the public sector, an external industrial policy, regulation that doesn't just control, but seeks to unleash forces, entrepreneurial forces, forces of innovation. You know, this can be done differently, and it's about time that we do it.
Perfect. A call for action here. Let's turn to, we hear, the word over and over again in, international markets, partnering, geopolitical tensions. So, Luc van Middelaar, you are the founder of the Brussels Institute of Geopolitics. It's founded by, I think, 7 member states and more to come, hopefully. And it's really looking at geopolitics and how the dynamics are changing and what we can do about it. So you are talking about that Europe needs to think in terms of power, interest, strategy. What do you mean by that, and what does it mean for economic security?
Thank you, Cecilia. I think what we aim to achieve as a small catalyst, like yourselves and others in this ecosystem here in Brussels, is to accelerate Europe's strategic awareness, to understand as Europe also the bigger picture in which all of these discussions on economic security are taking place. If you zoom out a little bit, basically times have changed, and one way to sum it up is to say geopolitics is back. We have seen with the war in Ukraine the return of war on the European continent. We see also after 3 decades of globalization, more or less frictionless, a return of great power rivalry between the US and China, not to mention all kinds of other security and strategic challenges. And Europe and the EU is not so well equipped to deal with these challenges, to deal with an environment where it is more and more also power, state power, which determines outcomes or motives of actors more than sometimes rules or values. And that is understandable, knowing where Europe is coming from. Post 1945, 1989, all of that, end of history, understandable. Europe has pushed for this world of multilateral organizations, free trade, etc. But in today's landscape, we may come across as either naive or easily outcompeted, and I think that is very worrisome. Bringing it more concretely also to the issue of economic security, I think that is the heart of many of these discussions, and there, of course, the key element in all those I mentioned is the US-China rivalry. It is in all your slides and all your comparisons in this great report, highly recommended. It's about Europe, China, and the US. But our 2 main competitors are also not only active in the game on AI, biotech, quantum, semicon, be the best, have the largest market share. They're also in a game of being the number 1 in the world as such. They have a strategic drive, public and private, in this power race, I would say. And it means that for both Washington and Beijing, foreign policy and security considerations give an extra push to what they want to achieve. In more R&D, in more state aid, more investment, different trade and other strategic partnerships with partners across the globe. And of course for Europe, that has double impact, not only as we know by now that the old international multilateral globalization order is under huge pressure, and we try to uphold it as we should, because that is indeed, and I agree, within our interest. But it also means that our 2 main industrial, technological competitors, they bring this extra drive, they bring this sense of urgency and dynamism to that battle, which is about power, about their place in history, about being number 1 in the world. And for us, it's sometimes even difficult to understand, but we should be aware of that to not be each time surprised and to also inject more urgency, as Anne and yourself also advocate, into our take on all of this.
So interesting. So is it a little bit like you were saying, like we have two states that they are rivals at, you know, with their states, and the private sector is like, you know, following the states, but here in Europe we are still like fighting, you know, public sector and private sector. We're trying to regulate each other, and you know, we still live in the same world of, if we prevent private sector from doing something, you know, this is only good. Are we not following? We don't get the game.
Well, I
Don't
think
get the game have changed.
I mean, of course, here you have to make distinction between China and US. I mean, China is always about the state, basically, at heart, and state-owned enterprises, etc. I think the key difference for us in Europe to come to terms with is the way the US is changing and the way the United States is doing industrial policy, for instance, and recreating strong public-private connections. Inflation Reduction Act is just one element in this. There are many others and the United States is no longer upholding the international trade order we cherish. And maybe it started to some extent under the Trump administration, but that movement has continued under the current Biden administration. It will no doubt continue, whoever wins on the 5th of November, the presidential election. So that it means that for us Europeans, we are more lonely in that world in upholding that liberal order, and we should get used to it. And it also means that, probably you will need to find ways also here within the Brussels discussion on public funding for strategic investments in various sectors which you have identified, and where, of course, then it will be a matter of not backing losers, as it was called in the old days, but picking winners and be very selective and all of that. But the whole game is changing there, driven again by geostrategic dynamics of US and China. I think that has been underestimated, and that movement will only intensify as we look a decade or two ahead, if I may.
Yeah, super interesting. So let's take this from the geopolitical, the game is changing, the world of rule-based trade order is, you know, falling apart, and take it all the way down to company level, right? Or up to company level, we could say. Live in the real world, you need to compete in this world, you need to grow, you need to innovate across border. So Catherine, you are the head of political affairs and government relations at Bosch. And you are also one of the largest producers of semiconductors for the automotive industry. So we have seen in the study that we are not game on, as a total industry on semiconductors. We have the CHIPS Act. Maybe your judgment call of whether this is enough, is it good enough, does it work? And is there anything else that Europe can do in this game?
Thanks a lot, Cecilia, and thanks for having me. Indeed, I mean, Bosch is a producer also of semiconductors. We've just announced last year our cooperation also with ESMC, Infineon, and NXP to build a new fabric in Dresden. I mean, some years ago, Europe decided to step out of the production of the small, not sized chips at that time, that was microchips. And what we see today is the result of the decision many years ago. So we have to catch up in this field. I mean, our investments, they help, but they're not enough. We need more investments like this, like on the front end manufacturing and semiconductor production. We are not very good in Europe, so we have to catch up. But of course, we shouldn't see everything just negative. There are some strengths in Europe that we have in the semiconductor supply chain, for example, in specialized materials, sensor and power electronics. We have a significant user application capability in the automotive industry, ASML. We have the strong machinery equipment for semiconductor production. So we do have some strengths. And we should also focus on our strengths to further strengthen them, because I think we have to accept in Europe that we will never be self-reliant. We have to partner with other countries, but I think it's easier to partner if everybody has something to bring to the negotiation table. So we have to strengthen also our own strengths, so we have something to bring to the table to negotiate. And we have to look for partnerships with reliable partners, because we still be dependent on in the semiconductor supply chain. I mean, the chip is traveling 2 to 3 times around the whole world before it's completely finalized. So the supply chain is extremely complex, and that's something we have to accept. But at the same time, we need more, as I said, we need more investment. So we need targeted large-scale funding. Skills, I think, were mentioned many, many times. We have to invest in skills in Europe. And partnering as well.
Yeah. So one follow-up question here. So you read the economic security strategy. You participated also in the study. If you look, be bold. So if you look at the economic security strategy, are there some of these measures in that paper coming out of the Commission that will help you to grow? Or are there other policy tools that you see that would be... So, I mean, you live in the real world, right?
Yeah.
You need to make a living, you need to innovate. So what would help you? What would move the needle?
I mean, as was mentioned before, there is a lot of focus at the moment on the protect field, which from a global company perspective, that's not the field where we should put the most focus on. I think we will not win if we have a very defensive approach. I mean, there's many men and probably football fans in the world, but if you look, for example, at England, great team, great players, probably the best players, but they play very defensive. Let's see if they win the Euros, but I have my doubts. Sorry. And you can tell me afterwards for this.
Yesterday due to the match.
There's probably many, many more football experts in the room, but I just really feel like we should focus really much more on the promotion and partnering angle from a company perspective. Of course, there might be some trade measures that are necessary, but then really think about they have to be targeted, they have to be temporary, and really solution-oriented. They always have reactions. And for companies, sometimes there are reactions from third countries, which are, for us, our export countries. So that's extremely tricky. So yes, you can maybe have some protect elements, but be careful. And that's why we also appreciate with the Commission that you do take the time to analyze at the moment. So far there were only communications, nothing set in stone yet, and see what is missing and what we need to do. But do focus on the promotion, regulation that helps and doesn't just put a lot of bureaucracy onto companies. Also, some of the measures, outbound investment screening, they will create a lot of bureaucracy for companies. Some of the measures, they are in our own interest. We are doing them anyway. We are screening extremely carefully our supply chain diversification. So just, be careful what else. Yeah. The burden that you put on companies in this field.
So I think what exactly we are saying here is that thank you for only doing a paper of communication. Read this book before you start doing something. So, yes, thank you so much. I think it's very important. Actually, maybe next time on the panel, we should start by the company from the real world. What's your biggest problem and how can we help you? I think I'm going to do that next time. Anyway, now let's move to interactive. Did you all do the Slido thing? Yeah? Can we have the Slido up again so we can scan it? Please? Yes. So we will ask you now, and everybody online, if you are been able to take a picture of the code, then we will pose some questions here. Which measures are most suitable to enhance European economic security to increase our competitiveness? Very uncomplicated short question. So, in short, what should we do to become more competitive? So here we go. Streamline regulation, less reporting burden, pan-European procurement, skills, tax incentives, private-public partnership. We'll wait. We'll give it 1 or 2 more minutes. Interesting. We're going to wait a little bit because we need that info on stage here to continue the next question, right? Will it look stable now? We'll give it half a minute more. The picture is so right now it looks very much like taking this spaghetti bowl of all the regulation and making sure that it's ironed out and easy to to find your way through the jungle of spaghetti regulation, and that we remove all this reporting and the endless amount of reporting burden on companies that sometimes does not lead really to any kind of action. That this is really the number one. I'm actually surprised about that, but that maybe shows how much we actually. I looked at the numbers. Companies use like 2.3% of revenue for R&D in average, and I think we use 2.5 on compliance cost.
Yeah.
I mean, so the tipping point between R&D and compliance is basically has turned. So, and I think this is a very strong message that I send here. Then education and skills. We need the people, we need the skills. So, dear member states, it's not something that the EU can solve. Please get your act together and make sure that we educate the right people. And then we have large-scale infrastructure investment, private-public partnership projects, tax incentives, and targeted funding from institutions like EIB and other. Okay, super. Okay, and then it says partnerships with other countries on raw material. So listen, I think the statement of at least the top ones is quite clear. We'll continue with the survey as we continue the panel also. So let me go the other way around now. So Catherine, I'll start with you, and say, like, you have been interviewed as a part of the study. What is striking that Europe struggles to leverage big capital investments. We saw that also here. We also struggle to have big companies, the small fishes that we saw before. What's the solution? How can we make Europe more attractive? How can we get more money in the hands of companies? And how can the small fishes become big fishes?
Very good question. I think, to be honest, the answer was on the slide before with all the answers. We have to make Europe attractive. I mean, the regulation topic is definitely a topic. I mean, I'm also in close contact with our board of management, and they do observe very carefully what's happening, and they do realize what is happening in Europe, and also compared to other regions. We need the large-scale funding to attract companies here in Europe. We also need to have the skills, as I said, also retain talent that we have to make Europe also an attractive place for the talent to stay here. We have a venture capital. I mean, compared to the US, the access to venture capital in Europe is much, much lower. Maybe that's something that we also need to work on. Yeah, I think we can start with that.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, to the point. So, Luc, going back to the big picture again, right? So, is there any chance that Europe can become like a geopolitical powerhouse? And what are the, how and will we collaborate with allies to do that? I mean, to enhance capabilities of strength of partners.
Well, I think the allies or partnerships question is very relevant, but it also comes second. It's really relevant because, of course, it's about EU-US cooperation. It's about partnerships for critical raw materials, also with countries, Central Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and so on. But I think before we look at all these partnerships and tools, it's also a question of, and partners in the rest of the world, what do we want ourselves? Huh? What is our view, our strategy? And I think when I look not at your document, but at some of the Commission's documents, if I may say so, Denis, it's a real, you feel like the pleasure of, right, we have this great toolkit, we have all the instruments, we have the FDI, outward investment screening, all kinds of things we can do. But what is missing, I feel, in the conversation about this, is what for? What do we actually want to achieve in this big picture, in this history as it is unfolding between US, China, rest of the world? What actually are the risks that we consider most important? De-risking is a great term, it's very consensual, we can all agree, but what actually is the risk? And the agenda this afternoon is a great agenda of let's say, economic strength with all the means we can bring to bear to that, and have your big fish, and have a single market, and have foreign partners. But then I think the question is, once we have that economic strength and bring it to economic security, how do we use that strength? Do we use it offensively? For instance, vis-à-vis China, which seems to me a little bit the elephant in the room. Economic security strategy is also a China strategy, even if we don't say so here. In Washington, they would say so openly, sans gêne. Or do we have an economic security strategy which is more, let's say, defensive in the sense, okay, we just protect one of your T's, and which is an important one. That is some more clarity or political conversation on this underlying objectives, even if, of course, that is a difficult and fraught discussion, but it might help to have a less ambiguous, a more straightforward view of what we actually want to achieve. And from there on, you can then also choose your partners, knowing who you are, what you want, where you want to go. And we feel at our institute, and we want to delve into that in our next research and papers after the summer, is a conversation we should start having also in Brussels and in the EU more widely.
Yeah, I did hear Vestager before actually saying, well, you know, we are actually trying with EU, US, but also with the G7 to basically shape that new community of, you know, of power or friends, right? Somehow, but yeah, okay. At least that's one bold move, or a move at least, right? But it's totally right. What's the strategy? Why are we doing all this? Just because we can, or because we need to do something bigger? Yeah. Exactly. So I'm looking forward to that report. So let's jump back to you, Dennis, before we go to you, Anne. So you and DG Trade has had a huge role to play here, and in both in terms of partnering, but also protect. Of course, as you said, I'm a kind of protect guy. So our study shows that these restrictive measures will have like a backlash. It will definitely not boost the economics. So do you think it will weaken companies also, and will it make us too defensive? And finally, can you give us a little bit of insight on where the member states are on their, because you asked the member states, like do a risk assessment. So if you can give us a little bit of insight into that too.
Let me try to answer that question by starting by saying I completely agree actually with what Luc was saying, and I was not saying anything different. An economic security strategy is about giving definition to what do we need to de-risk and why. Now, the problem is you can't define this in abstract and then deploy. You have to, it's in the implementation of the economic security strategy and its different work streams that we're going to identify the calibration of that de-risking. And yes, in large part, this is about de-risking our economy from China. There's no problem in saying this. Yes, inter alia, it is about that. Now, that requires having a risk assessment and a risk mitigation set of frameworks. And that's why at the core of the economic security strategy lies these risk assessment exercises that in a setting like ours, which is the European Union, which is not a unitary state, you need to do incrementally between the EU institutions and the member states. And doing this iteratively is what we need to continue doing. So it's not something that you do once and you stop. It's something that will be happening progressively and giving definition to de-risking as we produce those outcomes. So that's how I think we see this. By the way, linked to this is the question of how we do this, not just not being a unitary state, but also being a market economy. I mean, yes, there is more government intervention in the economy, but we are not a state capitalist economy. We are a market economy. So, therefore, the whole question is how do we create a pathway for calibrated meaningful and sensible de-risking where we need to de-risk with the private sector. Most of these issues will have to be done through, first of all, a granular understanding of what industry and economic operators need and how they operate in complex value chains. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into this. Second, that out of government, so to speak, whether it is at EU level or at national level, depending on where the division of competence lies, that we are able to give the right signals and the right incentives that are going to produce a result. Because in a market economy, we don't set the conditions for trade out of the state. The companies trade and invest. So we have to find the right way to create the right incentives. Therefore, it requires a sort of public-private partnership, which I think, frankly, today is still very much in the making. And we have some frameworks at EU level, but it requires a level of granularity and co-construction that we still have to find. And by the way, we can get inspirations from other jurisdictions in doing. We are very interested, for example, to see how a country like Japan is developing an economic security strategy, because there is a very interesting interaction, historically, traditionally, between parts of government and the private sector, for example. In some cases, it is easier. I mean, we do have trade restrictive measures when we deploy this form of economic statecraft, which is, for example, in the face of a big geopolitical crisis, economic sanctions on Russia. There, it's a little bit simpler. Sanctions, you comply, right? When it comes to, yes, and some people will find it difficult because there are complexities with compliance, over-compliance, interpretation, etc. But we do there, we provide predictability in a sense. What is difficult is when, of course, we are dealing with something which is less clear-cut, which is on a scale, and that's the question of de-risking, because there the predictability is not easy to give from the public sector to the private sector. I think it's all these things that we're going to have to, that we need to figure out as we construct the thing. I'm not sure I've actually answered your question.
I think
I
the
just
only
said things.
No, but you so yes and no. Partly
Okay.
you did.
All right.
And one thing I did learn is that
Well,
you
partly
say
is not too bad. I mean,
no, partly is okay. It's okay. We'll get to the rest. But no, joke aside. But what you did say is that there is still this kind of and for us, I think something that we like to hear, and we think that this is what is lacking. Somehow Europe has not found this dance. You know, we published a paper called "The Love Story Between the Companies and the Single Market," right? Somehow that love story is a bit rusty, right? We're not totally in love with the single market. We're not really. We don't think it's real, and you know, we would like it. So a little bit more love. And what you said, I think you said the EU, and we haven't still found that how to have a much closer dialogue with private sector.
and probably both in the promote and the protect, by the way. I mean, I take good note of what you say on how we need to cater for bringing industry into the whole discussion of the promote side.
Yeah.
I argue that the same applies for the protect side, because I think you can't implement the protect. I mean, the first line of defense, of course, in a market economy are the economic operators through due diligence, for example. And at the same time, also understand that we cannot put all the burden of what we want to achieve as a state, as public authorities, on companies. Because if not, you create a level playing field problem. And that's also well understood.
It needs to be with companies. But thank you so much for that. And then turning to Anne. Anne, of course, I mean, you've been in the Commission for many, many years. You know how it works. A word of advice. You know, if you look at the approach that is taken now, 2 good advices from you now, also being on the private sector side and looking from the views of companies. What could we easily do that makes this easier?
My strong recommendation is that we don't we always tend to look forward, but it's worthwhile to look back. And if I look back, I see a very open, and I'm sorry, Dennis, in a little bit naive trade policy, keeping markets very open without reciprocity in other markets. I see a very, very strict state aid policy, sending our own companies out there to compete on a very unlevel playing field in very open markets with subsidized competitors. And of course, and you mentioned it in your introductory remarks, even though cost is always the overriding factor in public procurement, then I only have one question. Why do we impose on our own companies the highest taxes, the highest regulatory burden, the highest compliance cost, the highest wages, the highest non-wage labor cost, the highest energy prices, and then are really surprised if after a decade or 15 years of this, they cannot compete? You know, I mean, surprise. So my point is, let's not pretend we are starting from scratch. I mean, we need to learn from past mistakes. I think this is why we're having this discussion here today, and understand that we are now in a weak spot because we have built up terrible dependencies. Coming back to wind, you cannot produce wind turbines in Europe without Chinese components, whether that's rare earth, whether that's permanent magnets, which we have lost the ability to do here in Europe. So, you know, we are today in a very tough spot. You spoke about my 5 years in the Commission. After those 5 years, I had one insight. And that is that the world is engaged in a competition for technology supremacy. And I use the word supremacy purposefully, because those that will have the supremacy, and if they are ill-intentioned, can weaponize these dependencies and will weaponize these dependencies. And they will really can use coercion vis-a-vis us. And I think this is what we're feeling now. So no policy will be a silver bullet. We are in bad shape. This is a very serious moment. And that's why I'm saying, let's not pretend we're starting here from scratch. There is something that led us here that hasn't worked, that we need to do better. And this is my plea for the next Commission is, you know, we speak about streamlined regulation, but I think what people are really asking for in companies is really aligned policy making, where we have aligned trade policy with state aid policy, with industrial policy, with energy policy, research and innovation policy, really as a holistic policy that makes sense. Where not one part of the house is doing one thing and another is doing another thing, and it doesn't add up. And our companies in the middle can't compete at home or abroad, right? So this is where we are. And let me say, I deplore when we speak about China and the United States in the same vein. I can tell you that the Americans are buying our 5G. The Americans are buying our wind turbines. They have much better instincts about economic security than we have, where price and competition and open markets have always been, you know, sort of the mantra. And this is what got us here today. Where they bought European, we bought Chinese. So let's be very clear about this, right? And this is why we are in this situation today. Also, deserves to be mentioned that the Americans are providing our security guarantees, without which we are just the backyard of Russia and China. So this is very serious what we are talking about here. And to the extent that Europe has any sovereignty, it really comes from our economic standing. We are a political dwarf. You know, people used to say we're an economic giant and a political dwarf. We are well on the way to being a political dwarf and an economic dwarf. And then you want to see what kind of sovereignty we are going to enjoy. So these are very serious times. Thank you for your report. The last thing I will say is next time around, please also look at all the digital threats we are exposed to. The espionage, the surveillance, the cyber attacks we are subject to, the online disinformation, because you need to add all that on top of what you described here, right? So this is a very serious moment, and this is a very serious discussion. Thank you for initiating it.
Yeah. So there is never a panel without Anne where she summarized much better than the facilitator. And I mean, perfect. What can I say now apart from thank you? But no, until I say thank you, just one thing. I think you're right, Anne, and I think that that's maybe the conclusion. We keep on pushing. I mean, we are privileged people, all of us sitting here, we're super privileged. there's a world out there of citizens that needs to live in the world. There are our kids that needs to live in the world, and hopefully in a safe Europe. These are serious times, and the choice of this commission and their ability to act and take cool decisions where we act as one team and not as 27 different teams will determine how the future looks on digital critical technologies, but also on our financial stability and our military stability. So with that, let's all take the responsibility of driving this forward. Let's be concrete in how we do our recommendations. It's also industry's role to basically make very concrete recommendations. Untangling the spaghetti ball of all the regulations, as I said, next week for us. It's supposed to be a staff away day. It's in a nice place, but we're going to work on exactly that, and we'll definitely be back. And as we see here, maybe one question from the audience. Do we have the time? Okay, we have the time. So, isn't investing in our strength a defensive strategy? Couldn't we play offense and invest in our weaknesses to win the AI race? So that's one question, and you can decide who would take. I will give it to you, Catherine, right? And then another one is there a risk siloed thinking in the European Commission? With DG Trade focusing at protective measures, is economic diplomacy with like-minded partners actually on the table? So I think that's for you. So as I cannot do more than two, I'm going to give it to Catherine and to you, Dennis. Catherine, go.
So the first question, is it a defensive strategy to only invest in our strengths? I'm not saying we should only invest into our strengths. We should definitely also try to catch up on where we have weaknesses. But what I would also wanted to say is we shouldn't forget about our strengths. So we should be realistic. We can't be self-reliant. We can't do everything in Europe. So we have to really very smartly see where we focus on. It is catching up, but also focus on our strengths so to do have some kind of negotiation power going forward. That's what I want to say.
And I think one of the things, I mean, in business, we talk about core business, right? You know, in up times, we go a little bit wild, then we invest in a little bit of everything, and if it goes well, it's super. But then if there is a recession, we go back to core biz. What's your core business, right? So you're saying right now we're in a situation where it's core biz. Focus on core biz and win that game. Dennis. Is there a silo thinking? Do we actually have promote an active outreach to partners and all these things on the table? Is this happening, actively, executed?
There's always a risk of silo thinking in government. That I can assure you. We do try not to be totally, stupid either. The question of whether DG risk focusing only on protective measures, no. I think DG Trade essentially believes in shoring up the integration of the European economy in the global economy. Because again, it starts with openness. The basis for our competitiveness is our insertion in the global economy. As it happens, we also now have to deal with pockets where it requires some de-risking. But both, it's not one or the other. You have to do both. So I think the risk of us drifting into a protection in the sense of protectionist direction is simply not there because it's not in the European interest to do that, to put it as simple as possible. Economic diplomacy with like-minded partners on the table, of course there is. And you mentioned when you were in conversation with Margrethe Vestager, the initiatives that have taken place in this area with a range of like-minded parties. I'm thinking, for example, about the Trade and Technology Council with the United States, which is exactly about this, which is exactly about how do we navigate this without having unnecessary regulatory divergences, and on the contrary, produce regulatory convergence to build safer, more integrated markets. That's exactly what is the order of business for continued economic diplomacy out of the European Union.
Yeah. So just to a small provocative comment there. I come from a very small country, but I used to be for 9 years. They actually gave me this very honorable position of being the head of the Royal Export Grant Committee of Denmark. And one of the things that I saw was that there was a lot of noise, right, until it reached the companies. So when I think about economic diplomacy, even though I know it's meant well, the TTC for me is a policy. I would call it a policy economic diplomacy. I think when we talk about economic diplomacy, we think like, how can we actually actively promote companies in the market? Direct promotion of real companies in market. The English have been masters. Still remember a meeting with them, I think 15 years ago, listening to their strategy of how they support their companies externally. They have been super at that. US does it magnificently. But real economic diplomacy, is that something that is like one of the tools that we are looking at? Yes, sorry.
I'll give you a very concrete answer to this, taking the example of wind. What we do for the wind sector of DG Trade is not applying protective measures on the EU market. As a matter of fact, as you said, in the wind sector, we don't actually have a surge in imports on the EU market. What we're trying to do is support big EU players in this area to be globally competitive in markets where there are opportunities to participate in deployment. We're doing this, for example, in Asia. We have worked enormously on the offensive side of the strategy, on the promote side of the strategy, to make sure that the regulatory approaches that are being developed in Japan on wind, for offshore wind, are regulatory approaches that are not going to be adverse to the interests of the European manufacturers, but on the contrary are going to enable them to participate in deployment. And the second round of tenders in Japan has shown that they are getting a stake of the deployment. So that's the kind of economic diplomacy that we have in mind as well for the key sectors in green tech.
Super. I'm going to round off this panel, I think, just by saying I heard some really good tones in how do we actually also on the protective side, bring companies in the room and have a dialogue. I'll take you up on that. So the companies are here, they're members. We'd really like to sit down around the table and take one P at a time, right? And say, how can we do this? How can we do? What will actually benefit us? How can we, as good European warriors, be supported in this fight between giants and actually get out alive? So how can we actually do that, and with what tools? So Dennis, I'll take you up on that. I also hear a cry from Anne saying, "It's now." It's now. There is no. I mean, honestly, I used to be a CEO of a company. I went to Asia. I lived in China for a while. When I come back, nobody realized that there was a huge consolidation in everything that was called application. That was over. Nobody spoke about it. For me, it was like the reality. It was obvious. No one in the political system spoke about that consolidation phase. It was non-existing on the agenda, but it meant that we lost hundreds of thousands of companies in Europe because there was a consolidation and we didn't even know. This is time. This is the last consolidation phases, and we need to get our act together. And I hear from Catherine saying, when you are in times of recession, focus on your strength. Don't go crazy and wild on stuff that where you cannot lead. I also heard earlier on quantum, for example, where we lead in research, commercialize. Let companies lead that effort. And from Luke, you said it's happened already. I mean, we have a US that is not keeping the rules. We have a China that's not keeping the rules. We're stuck in the middle. We need to start playing the game that is being played already instead of living in a world of perfectionism that doesn't exist. And from my side, I would just say, without having value, there are no values that will survive. And with that, let's have a coffee and be back in the room in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can't let you go, there's no way. I'm already still burning. So hold to me close, now baby. I do what I'm told, still learning. To take my chances, to take my time. To keep on dancing, to walk that line, yeah. You got me shifting the paradigm. No longer wishing, you're my lucky strike. Love the way you ride. Look into my eyes, say you're ready to go. Let me wrap my arms around you, 'cause I can't go home without you. And my heart just vibe with you, babe. Wanna go sky high with you, babe. Gotta bring you close to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. Cooler than cold, I'm all in. So load up the dice, so heavy. The way that you roll, I'm falling. So I never fall. I'm ready to take my chances, to take my time, to keep on dancing, to walk that line. Yeah, you got me shifting the paradigm. No longer wishing, wishing. You're my lucky strike. Yeah. Love the way you ride. Look into my eyes, say you're ready to go. $1,000,000 life, yeah. We could roll the dice. Yeah. Act like you surprised, but you already know. You're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat. Keep it on repeat, tested by the motion, loving this devotion. Live it up, live it up, live it up, sweet emotion. Every time, every night, you and I on a roll. Switch it up, switch it up, switch it up where I'm going. Stay on the fly just in time, know the right way to go. I'm on the road, it's my time, taking control of my life. I want to run the red lights, I've got to run this show. You always take me so high, you always make the highlights. I love the way we vibe, you're like a centerfold. Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat. Keep it on repeat, tested by the motion, loving this devotion. Ooh, that sugar. All I want is satisfaction. Make a move, baby, you got nothing to lose. Give me that, give me that, give me that good reaction. Gonna make it right, little like an offer I can't refuse. I'm on the road, it's my time, taking control of my life. I want to run the red lights, I've got to run this show. You always take me so high, you always make the highlights. I love the way we vibe, you're like a centerfold. Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat. Keep it on repeat, tested by the motion, loving this devotion. Ooh, that sugar Ooh, that sugar Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat. Keep it on repeat, tested by the motion, loving this devotion. Ooh, that sugar, just my kind of heat. Ooh, that sugar. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion. Ooh, that sugar.
like that for you. Hey. Got a super bad bitch, feel like Jonah Hill. Look at how she walk, and you know it's real. No question, if she like attention, I gotta give it to her, yeah, you know the deal. I'm a boss, I swipe that for you. Girl, you look good, you top 10, amazing. Spark a new flame, I like that for you. Yeah. Tell me what you want, I like that too, baby.
Treat my hoes like the plugins on this damn song. I cracked them all. You know I love it when you got that ass bouncing on me like a basketball. Baby, you could have it all. Only title that I give you is this wave that I'm on, yeah. Saying that she love me, so I'm playing along. Look in her direction, now she taking it all. And I can't stop thinking about your curves. Teach you about the bees and the birds. Then I eat the cake like dessert. She gon' bust it open real quick for real. I'ma drop it in like Vert.
Got a super bad bitch, feel like Jonah Hill. Look at how she walk, and you know it's real. No question, if she like attention, I gotta give it to her, yeah, you know the deal. I'm a boss, I swipe that for you. Girl, you look good, you top 10, amazing. Spark a new flame, I like that for you. Tell me what you want, I like that too, baby. Yeah, I like that, I do. Grabbing on your left cheek with my right hand, tight pants, got me feeling the type of way. If you want it, I could give it to you all day.
Name a time and a place, bet I'll pull up, yeah. Dinner for the day, we could cook up, yeah. Take you down in the kitchen right after you hit the road. I swear I'm still thinking about your curves. Teach you about the bees and the birds. Then I eat the cake like dessert. She gon' bust it open real quick for real. I'ma drop it in like Vert.
Got a super bad bitch, feel like Jonah Hill. Look at how she walk, and you know it's real. No question, if she like attention, no question, I gotta give it to her, yeah, you know the deal. I'm a boss, I swipe that for you. Girl, you look good, you top 10, amazing. Spark a new flame, I like that for you. Ay, tell me what you want, I like that too, babe. Ay, yeah, I like that. Got a super bad bitch, feel like Tony Hawk.
For real one.
I'ma drop it in like Bird.
Blood on my fingertips and words on my tongue. So many verses I wish I would've sung. But what if my secrets ruin today? I pour another glass up to keep them at bay. Think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. I found light in the darkness and learned to lead the way. Your flashlight is fading and I'm going my own way. The sharp words of anger should cut me like the knife. You stabbed in my back, but you forgot that I can fight. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others. Not like the others. The world inside me, baby, is mine to discover. Mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You love to claim me. You say you make me, then make me again. You love to claim me. You say you make me, then make me again. You love to claim me like I'm some trophy you hold in your hands. Don't make me again. Don't make me again. Think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another. Go find another. Your hands sculpted me. Oh no, I'm not like the others, not like the others. Oh, what inside me, baby, is mine to discover, mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe. You think you found me? Oh yeah, then go find another, go find another. Your hands up in me. Oh no, I'm not like the others, not like the others. Oh, what inside me, baby, is mine to discover, mine to discover. Can't take that from me. Give me a space to breathe.
Guess that's what I get for leaning into the best friend. Now I've got one more accent, two less hands here for holding. Ignored all of my reasons for running far from my feelings. Now I'm down on my knees and watching you as you're leaving. I hear you say goodbye, and I say I'm fine. But really if I'm honest with myself, I'm a mess. Total fake, thinking I might need some help. Cause I never change, always getting in my own way. Oh, look at this mess I've made. Look at this mess I've made. Oh, I'll take the blame for making you hate my name. Oh, look at this mess I've made. Look at this mess I've made. Oh, oh, look at this mess I've made. Look at this mess I've made. Oh, thought I learned my lesson that love does not equal tension. Turns out I'm still the same kid, falling hard for affection. And it hurts so bad when it's over, when we both wake up and we're sober. But got that first little moment, feeling you leaning closer. Hear you say goodbye, and I say I'm fine. But really if I'm honest with myself, I'm a mess. Total fake, thinking I might need some help. Cause I never change, always getting in my own way. Oh, look at this mess I've made. Look at this mess I've made. Oh, I'll take the blame for making you hate my name. Oh, look at this mess I've made. Look at this mess I've made. Oh, oh, look at this mess I've made. Look at this mess I've made. Oh.
So welcome back after a short break. We have with us, I hope so, that we have the Secretary of State for Economy of Portugal. Thank you so much for joining us, João Rui Ferreira. It's an honor to have you here. And all the day we've been discussing economic security strategy. And of course, in the end, all the member states and, like Portugal, you have a big say on how to execute on this economic security strategy. So, but not only are you a minister, you are also like a rock star in our world, right? You are a former CEO of a business that was producing corks. So you know also the business reality and how that functions. So I think you are very well positioned to be a sparring partner on how to execute on this strategy. So looking at our study, it makes very clear that we are behind on many of these critical technologies, and that the critical technology strategy right now of the Commission coming out of trade is very much focused on the trade restrictive measures, and not so much at how we become more competitive. And we heard right before this session that all the businesses said, what we really need to do is to become more competitive, we need more investment, and we need to untangle the spaghetti bowl of all these regulation, endless amount of regulations that we have in Europe. So do you think that we are focusing enough on these, how can you say, more incentive structures or more internal market policies when we look at economic security strategy? Welcome, and the word is yours.
Hello, Cecilia. Thank you very much. And my first words is really to greet and to everyone in the room and everyone online, and to thank you for the invitation. Your presentation was with a more sympathy than what I deserve, but I will try to make it positive as well. Well, I think we are in Europe. It's clear for everyone that we are in a moment of big decisions, of critical decisions. We have to really to be aware of the surrounding we have, both in the European ecosystem, but mostly in the global competitiveness, and economic security has to be at the heart of the EU policy. We support the view that there is room to streamline regulation, for more investment in critical technologies as well in large-scale infrastructures. For example, increasing the geopolitical tensions and even the global economic integration. But even with more pressing, we believe that the challenge that we approach in this economic security strategy and the subsequent packages need really to be addressed. There is a sensitive line, and there is always a sensitive position where we need to balance and combine the European Union's matrix between promotion of competitiveness, the protection from risks, and in the third, as a third pillar, and this was identified both in your document as in the European strategy, in the partnerships we need to establish with other geographies, other countries, other geopolitical parties of the world. We cannot have any doubt on this, and as you mentioned, my background comes from private sector, mostly from industry, and this need to be the basis for all this. We need to robust the industrial base, take advantage of the opportunities that arise from new technological developments, contribute to the success of these twin transitions, both digital and ecological, and this will come in the end of the day the base for the success of the economic security of Europe. Research and innovation is also a key, and the investment in this strategy, in this pillar, is absolutely crucial. EU needs to be a front runner on certain technologies. and offers the right conditions to support this transfer mostly to the market, and as well to scale up some of our SMEs to give dimension to these SMEs to be more global, to be in a more global scale with a different scale that can promote both investment, retain talent, and be competitive in a global scale. So I just started this role a few weeks ago, and of course the vision from the private sector, it was always that there is a nightmare of regulation. There is a very vast and complex, you said, a spaghetti of regulation, and we need to be more efficient, of course, and we need to be more clear so that these bottlenecks, this spaghetti, as you said, can be help and mostly a support that we can implement these reforms and transform really our industry.
Thank you so much. So, as you said, you're only quite new in this role, and I think it's very valuable to actually have this. I admire this exchange between private sector and public sector, and maybe this is really what some of the other countries are also missing. So looking at you going through this evaluation of risks, so the Commission asked all the member states, please evaluate the risks. If you look at the risk, what would be your two main risks, and what would be your two main opportunities that you think that Portugal can come out of this assessment with?
Well, starting by the risks is really to not be blocked and not be constrained by the regulation as a bottleneck or a limitation for promoting and developing all the new technologies in the moving to the industrial platforms and moving to the national industries. Wherever they can be national or European. There is also a risk, and this is not a specific risk from Portugal, but let's say a more global risk that we can be, and according to some studies, a bit behind other blocks in the world regarding these kind of technologies or these critical technologies. I think there are a push, and the Commission is trying to push hard for that national member states as well as the private sector moves forward in this movement. But let's say I see more opportunities than risks, to be honest, because we have in thinking about Portugal a very strong ecosystem in the, let's say, the scientific or universital or technological world. And what we need really to do is to do all the transition and all the, let's say, to pass this knowledge, to pass these technologies, to pass this awareness to SMEs, to companies, to work in a global network, engaging all these industries to work together. And I think we have good opportunities on that, not only because we are still implementing the Portugal's AI 2030 strategy, as well as we have now an opportunity with a national reform plan to help all this ecosystem with the digital innovation hubs, with the test beds national network, with the free zones for technology. And so with all these tools, I think we have here a lot of opportunities. Of course, the timelines to answer to all these commitments, to the short period that we have ahead of us to implement, we can see it as a risk, but as well as an opportunity, because really we need to put it in the ground, and we need this let's say this framework to be implemented, as well as we have in Portugal an opportunity to combine whether we have some industrial leaders that clearly are on the top and state of the art in some of these technologies, to help and to work in the strong network with small and medium-sized companies to make it as a global ecosystem. We also have, as part of as our ecosystem, a group of technological centers that are really in the ground close to the industrial sectors, to be part and to complement small market failures we can have and help these companies to spread this technology, many times to have the right infrastructure to help and to promote it. And in the end of the day as well, we need to be very, very careful and attentive to the vast talent we have coming out from our universities, from our scientific and technological ecosystem, and to retain this talent in Portugal, to be part of as well as the global framework, and to really work and to see the world globally.
Thank you so much. So I think we are seeing, this is a question that you didn't prepare, so I'm going to try to just, I mean, we saw that Spain, under the investment of the Recovery and Resilience Fund, they invested heavily in digital, right? And we've seen like Silicon Malaga, we have seen Spain going from the 17th place to the 6th place in the DESI index. Will we have like an Iberia, also now due to the raw material? I mean, you guys have lithium, and if we look in Iberia, you have, you know, a very close contact to South America. Will we see like a new rise of digital raw materials, digital skills, digital developments in kind of Portugal, Spain? Will this be like will you be the new digital hub in Europe, you think?
Well, that's a big question. More than what it seems, and sometimes we see that Portugal and Spain have the oldest borders in the world, and probably many parts of the world see ourselves as big competitors, but we are seeing more and more cooperation. We have a lot of opportunities to work together. There are a lot of projects running together, not only as in the European framework of projects, but also promoted by the private sector in the both sides of the borders. I see it. We have huge opportunities, not only in the raw materials, as you said, in minerals, whether we are talking about lithium, but there will be a lot of new opportunities as well in these critical raw materials. And we need, and we are working on that, and these are programs. And the cooperation between the two governments is quite clear. Our Ministry of Economy has been recently in Madrid, meeting with our Spanish also members of the government in the economic sector. And there are discussions. We are working side by side, and we see more opportunities on this to promote, not to have not as with an objective to be a special part of Europe or a differentiated part of the world by any opportunistic reason, but really because we have both talent, both the right infrastructure today, working hard on this, and we can be clearly, and we want to be more and more a good example to Europe, to the world, and we see a lot of opportunities here. We are just implementing now the government program. We are already with big plans and measures to be concrete, not only to be a roadmap of holistic objectives, but putting on the ground tools that can help not only startups in the technological sector, but also consolidating sectors to do this transition and to work side by side and to be even more efficient. The cooperation between the two countries is more and more going in the right direction.
So a last question for me. We know that around 6% of the world's capital, venture capital in AI goes to Europe. 6%, very, very small amount. And our report shows that on, for example, on AI, we are far, 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 far behind. So one of the reasons that we see is this spaghetti bowl, but it's also that we see that countries are still not working as a team, right? So somehow the council if we say, the European Council is not coming together with the tools that they have. So Portugal will address with their tax incentives, Germany will do their thing, Denmark will do their thing. They will buy procurement processes in countries. Do you see an opportunity in this new commission, this new world, that the council is moving closer and say we're a team? We are going to address some of these challenges of lack of capital, lack of implementation, fragmentation, too many borders, too many institutions. We're going to sit down as a team and look at the challenge as a European challenge and not as a national challenge. Do you think that there is like a room, a place in history where we are so much under pressure that we need to act as one Europe instead of acting as 27?
Well, let's take this in different parts. Having 6% of this capital in Europe means also an opportunity. It means that we have 94% to work on and to attract to Europe. So we always need to see the opportunities where we have M&As. I've been present in the last Competitiveness Council that was in May 2024. It was a long 2 days meeting and journey, and as always, more than what it happens in the let's say more institutional presence in the room or in the official meetings. Then we had bilateral meetings, we had talks, and the feeling is that everyone agrees that without knowing at that time the result of the elections of these last European elections, we need tempo. It's time to act. It's really time to look, to have a strong union, to have a strong commitment, to work side by side, to have a common role. And in the end of the day, I would say that more than the small details that can separate different countries, there is a common objective to make Europe the motor to hold this transition, to take the leadership in many of these critical moments we have. And everyone agrees that we need to find financial options to the industrial policy, to work the creation of an European fund to strengthen the position of capacities, and to have a strategical position in the industrial integration in all regions, independent of where we are. That focus and emphasizes in SMEs, because these are also a large part of the European industrial tradition and the reality, but seeing also large companies as a motor, the ones that will drive also this transition in all the supply chain, creating stronger brands closer to consumers. So there is I see a big opportunity, and now knowing and understanding the results of the last elections, I think this journey, this pathway will not be questioned, and hopefully we can, as soon as possible, come together as soon as possible come to the table and make all this the discussion real, put it in action, have a real action plan to put on the ground the tools and the framework that companies need to implement this in all these efficient strategies to make it real.
Listen, thank you so much for being a politician that sees opportunities and is ready to fight.
And I'm sorry for to come so late.
No problem. It's always you were worth waiting for. So a big thank you to State Secretary of Economy of Portugal, João Rui Ferreira, and for your visionary leadership.
And I wish you
one European digital powerhouse.
I wish you all a great conference, and hopefully not only the panels will be, of course, by the level of the panelists, very interesting, but I hope you can interact, know each other, and in the end of the day have some ideas and be creative, and be with creative minds we get good ideas, and we need really to act.
Thank you so much. A big hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cecilia.
And with that, for everybody who's online, thank you so much. I heard that you were sticking around, waiting to the end of all this. I just want to say like 3 things. I'm not going to make a long speech because we don't want to go out and drink and talk and enjoy. But I think there is opportunity. There is an urgency now, and we've been saying that for a long time. But honestly, I think it's at the tipping point. So I think there is an urgency. There is a tendency of old habits die hard. So let's hope that the Commission does not already start to think, let's just do what we can do and that we know how to do, but actually how can we solve the problems? And let us also, in the end, basically take the responsibility as industry to make sure that we give advice that is not, we don't like, but this is the how. And that we keep our executives also in the companies engaged in this dialogue. We've seen too long for that European companies sometimes struggles to bring CEOs to the table to actually talk. Digital Europe is ready to facilitate that. I really think we need to be visible, we need to be concrete, and with that, I would say let's be a digital powerhouse in 2030. And thank you for coming here today, everyone. Thank you.
Me tiene loco en la cabeza cuando me tocas. Siento que todo está bien, pero en verdad yo no sé si tú